Hello, welcome everyone. This is Amy the Mystic Rose Tarot. So, I am looking at this deck here, the Fifth Tarot, and I will be working with this deck over the coming weeks for various reasons, but primarily that I will be having Teressena and Martien, Bakens, who created the Fifth Tarot, as guests on my channel in about 2 weeks. So I've already done a review of this deck, and I'll put a link in the description so you can get my feedback on the deck. But what I want to do is I have this deck and one other deck that I need to do a discussion, or I want to do a discussion about, because this deck in particular, and as well as the other one that will be upcoming, are non-system. They have their own divinatory path. No influences to the Rider-Waite-Smith, no influence to the Doth, purely nature-oriented. And Teressena is the artist of the imagery of this deck, and Martien did the writings for this book. So the premise for me in doing this video is how to work with a deck such as the Fifth Tarot, where we're working with the powers of earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and how to explore that within ourselves, using those elements as guidance, as forces of empowerment, and for also for dissolving energies. These elements, these 5 elements, make up who we are, and they're constantly ebbing and flowing within us. So when I got this deck, it was through a swap at Newt's. It held the energies that I like to work with. Now, this deck here, as I go through it, this will not be a review. It'll just be more of a way to relate to some of the specific suits that are here. And there are 5 suits, with the addition of the suit of Lotus, which is the spirit or ether part of the Fifth Tarot, and also one of the Pentacle. We have the 4 points going in either directions, up, down, as above, as below, and then the ether, the spirit, encompasses all of that. And so that's what we get here with the Lotus. But when acquiring this deck, it's like this is a wonderful deck. And towards the end, if it does not slip my mind, there's some decks that I have that I work with that hold similar energies that could potentially be companion guides to read alongside of the Fifth Tarot. But if it doesn't slip my mind, I will show you those decks and a few of the images in relation to the energy and the imagery that we get from this deck. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be more or less how to work with a deck that deals a lot with the principles of nature and the 5 elements that we have here that we are comprised of. So this is the back of the cards. Here is our fire. Again, Lotus represents the spirit. So the Lotus, as we see here, I'm going to show you this really quick. About that highlight showing in. So the Lotus is the enlightenment. It's the completion. It's the wholeness that we feel after going through this entire journey with the elements. It's that feeling of I'm not going to say completion, because this journey here with these 5 elements, as this enraptures our higher selves, we start over again. Okay, this is many times over in our life that we experience things, that we go through the beginnings, the creating, the feelings, the thought behind it, and what we put into it, our investment in our time. This all makes up the journey to get to here. And then we start it over again. When circumstances come in and they challenge us, we are faced with certain aspects of the elements that come in and kind of keep a reminder of, where we came from, how, where we were, and how we can still maintain this kind of energy during times of challenges, and also times of greatness. So here, so over here we have our shells, which represent the water aspect. And then the stones. This is the suit that I've been looking through for the last few days. It's related to earth, grounding energy, fertile. Green is also the color that is associated with the heart chakra, hence my green candles here. And I also put in a purple candle because of the need to connect with our higher spiritual self. And that's something that I feel I've been missing in most recent months, is that connection, because of me being slightly pulled away from my practice. And so this deck here, going to it and looking through the cards and pulling some cards, just reaffirms the strength that I have, that the spirituality is still there. It hasn't gone. Maybe in the physical realm it feels like it's gone, but it's still inside of me, and there's just some inspiration that's needed. So this deck is perfect for those who feel like they're wanting to connect to their practice, whatever form it is. And I think the best way to reconnect with yourself spiritually, emotionally, so on and so forth, is to actually put yourself, and I've mentioned this a few times, put yourself in the realm of being in nature. Going to the trees, going to the forest, going to the mountains, going to the water, going to where there's movement and stillness and life force and creativity happening right in front of you. And that's what spring is all about. Spring is the blossoming, spring is the creativity. Things are moving, even though in some areas, in the States here, we're still getting a late start for spring in regards for warm weather, but we're starting to see daffodils and tulips starting to bloom. We're starting to see some flora here, but we're still pretty much in the cooler side of things, so that constrictiveness that we're still feeling here can be very, very challenging for us. So we need to bring in this energy of fire, of movement. We need to create this energy. And all these other forces here, fire and air, these are forces of movement. Water is a form of movement. And what really stabilizes and becomes a conduit for these three particular elements, and also Lotus, which rounds off these four elements, is earth. Okay, the stones. This is what takes in fire. This is what takes in air. This is what takes in the water for nourishment. And so if we can surround ourselves in an environment like that, whether it's something that we watch on TV, or an image of a scene of things out in nature, it could be a photo, or again a movie of some sort, we can start feeling inspired. We can start feeling this movement that we need, so that we can continue moving on forward to being the higher self of what we truly want to be. Some of us don't realize this. A lot don't understand the process of what the higher self is and how to get there. This deck can introduce you to it. I won't say it's a beginner deck because you should have some form of understanding of the suits of the cups, the wands, the swords, and the pentacles, and understanding those tools and the energy elements that are associated with them, and feel comfortable in holding a deck and reading with those elements. And once you feel comfortable with that, you can move to a deck such as this. So I keep going back and forth, but that's my nature these days with communicating. So let's go back to this. So I mentioned about the grounding nature of stones. So here, this is our major arcana. Okay, and I'll just turn it over. Got death, okay. So the major arcana, I feel, when you're working with a deck, especially a deck here where we're dealing with spiritual transformation and revitalizing, I think it's always good to work with, right off the bat, the major arcanas. I've come across a few decks where, interesting enough, the way that they were packaged is they were packaged with the minor arcana first and the majors were last. And I think that's sort of interesting. And if there's a guidebook associated with it, there's a bit of an explanation as to why the creator wanted to introduce the minor arcana first when it comes to learning that particular deck, and then the majors coming in last. And I think that's actually a good way of learning certain decks. But here, I think it's best to connect with the majors. And so here with the death card, the major arcana cards are pretty much the staple in introducing someone to a tarot deck. Okay, it's the first suit that we see. And a majority of decks, it's very straightforward in the sense of it's the image. The major arcana is very symbolic. We have one entity or one influence that we're seeing solely in this card. In the major arcana, all these other cards that we have here, we're seeing a story. We're building up to something. Okay, so we're seeing archetypes here. The archetypes that we see here is the journey that we are experiencing. We may see some individuals in the cards will experience animals, will experience, here we have the dragon, will experience all these different forms, these power forms, in many different ways. With this deck here, there are 4 symbols we see here in the corner. These you can bring in to your reading if you're versed in the symbology. Now we see it more in the major arcana than in the major arcana of this deck. So here obviously we have the numerical reference, 13 for death, and then here these are star symbols. These are symbols that the creators of the deck have placed here for those who want to work with these particular energies. In a sense, they have their own interpretation in relating to death. And then here is the sacred symbol. They're all different in the major arcana. And this relates more to the Lemurian energy. The book that you were seeing here in relation to the deck goes into a little bit of detail about it, about all these different imageries or all these different symbols. And of course here we have Scorpio, which is the astrological glyph for for the major arcana of death. And then here is the Mayan symbol. Okay. So for those who are focused on symbology and bringing it into the tarot, this can just further deepen the meaning of each of these cards in the major arcana. Again, they are solely in the major arcana. I don't believe they are shown inside any of the images, not that I've seen immediately. But this is another great thing with this deck in particular, is that it does bring in these elements. It brings in astrology, which many of you know that I like to incorporate into readings. And then we have our star symbol, and we have the Lemurian symbol, and then we have the Mayan symbology, all related to these cards. So this further extends the way that you can interpret working with this deck. And then here we have the moon, just beautiful image. And it's kind of hard to see. I can see this in many different ways, but first I just see two fishes there. They have like a very wide forehead, and they kind of merge into each other, but they are going in the opposite directions that we see here with the Piscean symbol, and the realms of the subconscious, the release of the soul, connecting, finding the light through the full moon. Just wonderful energy here. So one thing that I can suggest working with this deck, and also you can apply it to other decks that you are new to that have a different system. Again, I'm emphasizing in this video, it's working with a new approach to reading with a tarot deck that doesn't have direct reference to the RWS or Doth or any of the more known systems, is just connect with the major arcana right off the bat. Okay, and then from there you can start going to the major arcana and looking at it. I would say the next thing to do when working with the fifth tarot is, since it's so powerfully elementally oriented, break up the cards like I did here. Okay, the Seeker here, lotus, fire, feathers, shells, and stones. These are the equivalent to the court cards, and I will get to those in a minute, in a few minutes. But separate these and start connecting to the energy of each of the elements. This can also include spirit, ether, the lotus. Okay, and just start writing down how you feel about these cards. Interesting enough, working with the stones, I'm gonna grab this here. Okay, my sun sign is an earth sign, so look at, we got the greens, got the element of earth, as I was mentioning, connecting to nature, things that we're seeing abundance, but in various different forms. Okay, we see the fertility here and the lushness of the greens. This is actually amber here. The forest, the planets above us, ourself as it's connecting to these elements. Of course, roses here. The heart. This is an extension of the mystic rose. We have the desert. And this one just won my heart, because this was one of the last cards that I was working with last night before going to sleep, is this Eight of Stones. Eight of Stones is about creative energy and the work that we've been putting in, whether it's in an art form or business form. And it has to be an impassioned um, work that we are doing and sharing it with others. And turquoise is a very protective and powerful stone. This is tourmaline. Again, we have roses. So we're looking at different forms of nature here, the elements of nature, the stones that we have here. This is, I believe this is agate for our Artua stones. I want to double check that it is, oh, I'm sorry, it's malachite. So I have malachite here. And then we have the key to the universe. And then, of course, we see the tens. So the reason why I bring this out is, even though my sun sign is of earth, this particular suit of the stones was and I will have to work on this, was one that I feel I should easily connect with, but I don't, because I feel like I'm missing some of those elements that are portrayed in this deck. So and that's what I was saying, is when you look at all these suits here, I mean, listen to how you're feeling. Okay, we have here the shells. Okay, elements relating to water. The conch shells, dolphins for intellect and also intuitiveness. Seahorse, reproduction. Durability, strength, stingray, gentleness. This is beautiful too, the 5 of shells. Nautilus. This is a wonderful representation of the nautilus. Possibilities. The possibilities are endless. We have the spiral of the nautilus, which also incorporates the Fibonacci sequence, that when there's a mathematical equation that goes into repeating patterns like the Fibonacci sequence. It's very similar here that we see in the nautilus. The octopus. Genie in the bottle, genie, the Aladdin's lamp at the bottom, your 9 wishes, and then unconditional love. When looking at these, again, start logging in how you're feeling when you see this. This is an uplifting card. The energy, the colors. This deck is really vibrational. Some things are going to move you a little bit, like here, where color palette's a little darker, but here we have the brightness of the shell, so that makes me focus on this energy here. The stingray here. We look at all of these forces that come in. This is just beautiful. The completion, very similar to the lotus that we see here. Everything's revolving, everything has mutated, everything has evolved, has transformed to where it's at this state, and then we start over again. So it's something to take into account when you're working with healing of the spiritual self, rediscovering the sense of what's been missing for you. Like I said, the stones here is something that I really need to look for, because I feel like there's something that is missing. And so what you can do is just work solely with that suit. Don't bring in any of these cards, because I sometimes feel that if there is a suit that you're having a hard time connecting with, I'm going to show you the equivalent of the swords. There's no swords here, but it's feathers. But if there's an element or suit that you're having a hard time with, I highly encourage you to spend time solely with that suit. That's your homework. See what's not, why is there a challenge with that? And here we are with the feathers: divine, mind, truth, peace. Now, the beauty with these suits is the key words, which you could take with a grain of salt. You don't have to use the keywords, but they're there for guides. Is the keywords are associating energy with communication, spiritual communication through the universal dream. And then we have a polar bear. This is just beautimous. Look at this 5 of feathers, joy. Now the 5s, we usually see conflict, but here we're seeing how to work with the number of 5 throughout the suit and using it as a form of strength. If there's a challenge that's going on, we see more the strength that we can gain from it. So there's not really any negative imagery, no shadowy like imagery. There is a card here in the Major Arcana called the Shadow, but other than that, this deck sees more of how we can see the light in dark situations. Here's the 7 of feathers, balance like we see here. The scene is a little bit darker, while this one's lighter. And we have a halo effect that's going over this particular cardinal. Looks like it's a cardinal, maybe a blue jay. Doesn't look like a blue jay though. And it's like it's the interchange of this light coming from this presence to be shared over to this presence. The halo that we see there. We have different birds here. So we have focus, optimism. So when working with this suit here with feathers, look at that, higher intellect. Here again, the Fibonacci sequence. Solar logos. These are different ways that we can use the feathers, the element of air, the mind, the mental agility. We can use these key words to inspire and motivate the mind, so we can find clarity. We could break down things that challenge us, and to get clarity at the same time. But we have to go through these steps. Okay, there's no aces, but we have here the divine mind. The eagle is always seen as the bird of wisdom. I keep thinking peace pipe for this one, but we have the 3 of feathers, which is the peace. But I like this, the 2 of feathers crossing. This, I don't think this is a peace pipe, but it looks like it. This is actually, for me, the 2 feathers. I know I was kind of hesitant there for a minute. It's just sort of like communicating with someone else one-on-one and being open and honest with each other. And we have a wintry background here, so there's a lot of it's finding honest communication in a time or an environment where things are kind of challenging, things are constrictive. But we have the moon here, the crescent moon, which is starting to reveal and to open up those portals between 2 individuals, for example. Okay, so here we have fire, creativity, choices, spontaneity. So remember, these keywords that we see here, even though they can be applied to the other suits, but focus on the keywords, if you like, for guidance, solely on the suit. Creativity for fire, choices in the direction that we take this fire, the spontaneity that comes from the inspiration that we get, the inner light, the fireflies here, 4 of fire. Okay, transformation, we're starting to see the buildup of this energy and where it's been, how we've been developing it. Fire here is all about the development of that force. We have here inspiration, the sources that we can look back on and remember that were there, that influenced this. This could be deities, this could be mentors, people that really inspire us. And we're taking this energy, we're putting it out there. We got transformation, so now we're putting it out for those to see. Very important. One thing that comes, that I see a few times written in the book is, don't hide your gifts, don't hide your tools, your knowledge. Put it out there for people to be, for people to see. Eight of fire, fusion. It's the amalgamation of this energy. Okay, it's been activated. Now it's starting to go out to the world. It's starting to connect with people. The flow. Just letting it go, letting it do its own work. And sometimes when you have this kind of energy happening and it's excessive, sometimes a lot of it does have to be burned out. We have all this energy, you have all this creativity of movement happening, and it's excessive. Sometimes you just have to let that excess out. Just stop for a minute. Put the workload or that energy into something else, not so that excess energy can be molded into a potential new project or new direction. Okay, and then we have our lotus. Okay, this is the higher self. Okay, we have all the crystallization. So we're seeing, once the journey of the soul, the spirit of ourselves, once it's gone through these steps, it's not going to happen overnight. Excuse me. This is going to be years. This is going to take quite some time, depending on how open you are. Okay, when you're ready, you will start revealing and seeing things and start shifting, start transforming. Your sensitivity to things will come back. Different layers, multi-being, different layers of ourselves. This is the process of attunement. What we're experiencing when we're at that state. Things are changing inside. We're connecting more with the heart. This is one of my favorites here, the 5 of Lotus, the shape shifting. Teressena, who is the artist, did such a beautiful job of putting in the force of the fox, the human, and the eagle, of the wisdom and the intuitive, instinctual side of ourselves, and the human, the feather, the chrysalis, not the chrysalis, the butterfly, as we shape shift. Oh, and also the deer. How can I not forget that? That's just a beautiful card right there. So we're always transforming in this state. Okay, so what's happening here, we see an individual who seems to be at peace with themselves, but this is internally what's happening inside of us. Connecting to that higher self. The blueprint. This is what makes us all up. We have like the different levels of the chakras. From the base, our grounding level, to our sacral, and our solar plexus, our heart, and then we have the higher self, the crown. Oops, excuse me. And then we start feeling this interconnectedness. Just everything is at peace. And this may sound odd, but here, the soul that we're seeing here is someone that I've experienced. Not not through someone else, but this person being me. I have once upon a time felt all of this. And now I'm going back to try, not to try, but to work on regaining that connection, transcendence, where you have this literally almost like a shield of protection. I don't know if it's going to focus here, but there's this light right around. It's this light of just peace. We see it with people who have that higher sense of self. Dalai Lama, Thai, who passed away a year and a half ago. All these spiritual beings. And then, of course, we have enlightenment. Okay, and this is, again, we go through this many times over in many different forms. So it's interesting because as I'm showing you these cards, experiences are coming to me of what I had gone through a while ago, like 10 years or so ago, to get to this place. And to get to this place and to truly live this life of completion is, you have to make sacrifices. There are individuals who give up the material way of living. No house, no car, no family. And it's not that it's a bad thing. Those are things that we tend to grow up in society and know that that's what we need. That's what we should have because of the values that are out there in society. But for some, they don't need that. They want life to be very simple, pure. And so they lead a life of pureness. They lead a life of where they don't need any of those connections. And they go to places where it is very, very much nature inspired. They go to a place where they feel that they can heal and live the life that they need to and not worry about any responsibilities. Now, I'm not saying living a life like that is a cop-out. This is a choice that individuals make. And so with this series of suits that we have here, you can take these choices, these guides that are here, and decide what is best for you, what is best for your well-being. And a lot of that comes from letting go of things. The term swaha is a term that was introduced to me by one of my yoga teachers a long time ago. Swaha means freedom, means liberation, means to let go. And that word would come up every now and then in a few of the classes I would take, and I love that word. And once you embrace and you practice that art form, it literally is an art form of letting go, not being disconnected, but disconnecting, disassociating with energies that just are not of guidance for you, of inspiration. You start finding what is important. And you start finding the word self-care coming into your vocabulary. Things that were once that you thought of value were no longer of value. So what I'm saying right here is I have to make it very discretionary because this can cause a riff if a person comes to the spiritual realization that I don't need to work. Work does this to me. It makes me feel heavy or whatnot. Some people find enlightenment in work because there's something in that work that's keeping them active. It's creatively moving them. The same with relationships. I don't need a relationship because that's the responsibility. I'm my own relationship. We have to be careful with some of these situations that if you're wanting to go through a journey like this, because people who are trying to find themselves can't come back very much shifted and going away for months or years and living a life that is a little bit more on the swaha side and returning to the regular world, the mundane world, can be very shocking and it can be very traumatic. So when doing a journey like this, self-exploration, be mindful, especially if you're coming back. If you're coming back to a place where you may have those challenges coming back to you, going back to work, going back to family, going back to house, all those life responsibilities. Just be prepared for it. Okay, because that can jar and that could shake all this energy. And that's where the strength needs to come in, because you build such an embracement towards reaching this energy that when you come back, you feel like you want to come back to a place where life is all like this. Life is all of abundance and of creativity and of expansion of the divine mind, and it's not like that. So this deck here is great to keep things in a proper, stable manner. When you go away for a while and then you come back. We've done this. We've traveled. We've left our circumstances of where things were a bit overwhelming. We go away, and then we hear it in conversations on the way back. Oh wow, now I got to go back to school. Now I got to deal with this, so on and so forth. We still take that energy with us. We never left it. But we need to understand that when doing these kinds of path work and journey work, we need to cut off. We need to let go. And I almost feel that if people feel like a vacation is going to help them get away from things like that, they almost have to prep for their vacation. They have to prep to start, tell people, don't call me, don't text me. I'm gone for X amount of time. Don't reach out for me. I'm going to be in this environment. Please, no distractions, so that you can focus on yourself. It's almost what's needed. Even when you're doing this kind of work, you have to prepare yourself. When you have retreats and workshops that are taking you away, you can't really go from working a 12-hour shift and then the next day you're starting a retreat. You're not doing the work to prepare yourself for this. So with the fifth tarot, this journey helps you. This journey guides you for prepping for something like that, and also when you return. So work with these suits individually. When you get the fifth tarot, and I have a link of where you can order the deck. And I did make mention about the Seeker and the court cards here. So let's do this. I'm not going to do all of them because this video is getting long. So with the court cards, we normally see the Page, the Knight, the Queen, King. And I like here, those terms are dropped. Here we have the Seeker. Seeker is the person who, like I was saying, who wants to make these changes. That's the beginning part of their journey. And then once they find it, they get initiated. They embrace it. They are ready to make those changes. They're ready to start making the commitment to themselves. The apprentice. Okay, so once you've made that commitment, you start doing the work, you start doing the studying. This is a beautiful card too. How come whenever there's a skull in a tarot card, it tends to be one of the more beautiful things? Because I think it's something that we connect with. It's the bareness of who we are. So we have here the apprentice. The apprentice is taking the knowledge that we've gotten as the initiate and learning and working with that, we're building up our skills, our knowledge, our spiritual skills, our understanding, connecting with the intellect, the subconscious, the cosmos. And then here is the elementer. And this is the person who has done the work and has reached. I'm going to put this card here because I feel it sort of relates to it. Has understood and has experienced this higher level. So I'm trying to work with this glare here. There we go. And we see the transformation. See the energy of this card, very soft. Not that this isn't, and this tends to look like the beginnings. The individual here looks young, but ready, pure, ready, open-minded. And that's, again, where we need to start. We have the colors of purple and indigo for that increased intuitive nature that we have to reach to the higher self. And here we are, the higher self in its fullest state. And you know what? It starts over again. And then we go back to this. So those are the different stages. Okay, so with the court cards, are not really court cards. I would align it more towards the stages that are taking place, that the individual is going through. So we have the beginning stages, and then we have the openness to receive, and the knowledge and the experience that we are gaining comes into the apprentice. And then once we put it to work and we've connected with it fully, then we become that elementer. We have skillfully understood how to work with that, with those forces of the fire, earth, air, water, and making it as one. So I'm going to do here very quickly. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shuffle. I'm just doing a one-card reading here. Okay. Just going to pull one card here. I'm just working with the major arcana because, as I mentioned, I think this is a great way to start. And then from there, you can start working with the suits individually, but go to the one that you gravitate with for whatever reason. Okay, and one more here. Oops. Okay, I'm going to go from the top. Lovers. All right, so with this card here, we're seeing partnerships, we're seeing this connectiveness. So this deck is very much dealing with the inner self. What's happening, how we can work with energies that are externally taking place, but also how it's working within us. So here with the Lovers, we have the union, we have the understanding, we have duality, we have the masculine and feminine energy, we have light and dark. And this is spiritually connecting to that within ourselves. We are light and dark, we are masculine and feminine energy. However you sexually identify with yourself, masculine, feminine energy will always be there for each and every one of us. And connecting to that in a spiritual sense. And it's one of these things that when you have a conversation with someone and it feels both ways, like it's going, hey, I really like the way this is going, what we can talk on forever. That's the starting of that energy. Okay, that's the first step. And again, if you look, there's an outline of white around these individuals. That's that connection. And throughout the suits here, you will see this white glow around some of the entities, some of the deities, even here with the animals. It's this life force that is melding two entities, two forms together. So with this card here, it's everything that's being processed from the outside, but internally. How are we connecting to it? If we're having a struggle with it, we need to address some of the issues that are causing this imbalance. Are we feeling challenged by an individual or a force that is just not allowing us to connect in certain situations? So that's my quick read for this card here. And also I like here how we have the phases of the moon, very small, but you could sort of see where it's going towards the full moon, the lunation. There's only 3 here, and then of course we have the comets in the background, showing what's shifting around while connection is taking place. So that's an example of working. These are examples of working with this deck in various different ways. It's how we fully connect to something like this. This deck is very, again, cosmic, very universal. It may put some people off because of that energy. Some people don't like to have a deck that's like this. It's heavily spiritual, cosmic, whatever. But this is part of who we are. It's where we bring our practice, even down to the occult. There's spirituality and cosmic energy that is involved in various forms of metaphysical practices. So we cannot deny that. But what makes it different is the tools that we use and the energies that we draw in to get to certain levels of these practices, from witchcraft to, again, the occult sciences, so on and so forth. So I did, before I forget, I did want to make mention about some decks that I have that maybe you might have if you want to bring in for extra guidance. And these decks that I have here are more at the visual side, but they still incorporate the energy of connecting with nature. So the decks that I have here, I'm just going to show very quickly, I'm not going to go into great detail, is Phyllis Carrot's The Witch's Wisdom. And the energy is, to me, very similar. Okay, it's very nature oriented. Okay, not cosmic, but if you want to bring in some guidance of working with the powers of nature, this deck I feel would be very nice to work with. Okay. The other decks that I have here, I'll do this one here as well, is Vision Quest. Here the imagery is a little bit similar too, but they are not at all exact. But we are dealing with reaching higher spirit, but with the influence of American Indian shamanism and beliefs. And the creators of the fifth tarot are shamans. So we do see some of that influence in their decks. Let me go with the shaman. Okay, so that's the Vision Quest. If you have any of these decks, if you want to work with the fifth tarot and welcome in another deck for some additional guidance, those two decks. And then this is more of maybe a modern take. I'm not saying that this deck isn't modern, but the imagery, this is more digital images. But this one right off the bat, I kept referring to when I saw the fifth tarot, is this deck, the Dreams of Gaia. So this deck too holds cosmic higher self energy, working with the elements. There are no keywords. Here we have Earth. This is one of the court cards of guidance. Just a little bit, maybe, not exact, but I feel this card can graphically add a little bit of more direction, I guess, into the fifth tarot. I'm looking at the Lover's card here. So this is, again, visually some of the decks here. And then lastly, this is a deck I have not worked with, but it did come to mind. Came to mind just before I started recording this. I'm just going to pull the two cards that I have here up top. This deck came out about 2 years ago. It was a Kickstarter. It was my first Kickstarter that I wanted to try out. Is James R. Eads. This is the Cosmovisions Oracle. Now, the reason why I'm pulling this card out is, or this deck out, is it's more of the color palette. And there are no borders on this. But the color palettes are very similar, I feel. We see here with the one of shells, a little bit more contrasty. See here. Here, let's do the Seeker. So the Cosmovisions is a deck that was being promoted for past life readings. And that deck can actually, or this deck can actually be a deck to further deepen this working with the fifth tarot, because of it dealing with past lives and different stages of transformation that the soul goes through. So if you do have the Cosmovisions or Prismavision or any of James R. Eads' earlier decks, look at it, and maybe if you have this deck already or you're interested in working with it, look through it and see if that deck can actually help you deepen the direction of where you want to go with reading, practicing for yourself, regaining that spiritual self, that sense of being connected to who you are inside, and shedding, letting go, swaha, of things that have come in externally and that has sort of shaken up the environment of what you once had, hence here, and coming back full circle, but journeying through these different suits. So there you go. Some, not some, but quite a lot of insight regarding on the different approaches that you can take for working with the fifth tarot. Again, I will be having Teressena and Martien as guests on my channel in a few weeks to discuss this deck, which I am looking forward to. So I will share the post for that fairly soon, and come and join us. This will be a live discussion relating to the fifth tarot and to the work and services that Teressena and Martien do. Any questions you have about this, feel free to leave them in the comments. You can reach me via my website. All that information is available to you in the description below. And if you are interested in the deck, again, you can order it. The book is, I highly recommend getting the book. You can actually have the book and not have the deck, because the book is filled with information where it does talk, of course, about the deck, but there's so much insight in it that I feel that you don't necessarily need to have the deck. I'm not saying that not to get the deck, but it's a wonderful addition of knowledge and information for this particular deck. Alrighty. Okay, I will catch you all again very soon. I want to share this with you. Again, any questions you have about the fifth tarot or any decks that you may be working with that you would like to bring in to work with the fifth tarot, let me know. And on that note, you have a wonderful night. Pull a card for the evening or the morning to see how your day or evening, how your sleep will be, how your dreams will be, or how your morning, how the energy is going to be for that day. Pull a card out and let that set the path for you, okay? And keep everything light. Keep everything real. Breathe through a lot of this energy that could be overwhelming a lot of us right now, okay? All right, you take care, and I will see everyone again fairly soon.